Hello everybody, welcome to the channel again. Huge thanks to the subscribers. I'm doing something that I'll probably only do once, and it's well out of the comfort zone of the videos I've been doing, so I'm hoping that it will be of appeal to people. This is actually something that was requested, well, kind of requested. It was responded to when I said I might do it. Basically, Brian from Bookish did a great video where he gave people advice on how to help booktubers get more traffic and basically help the algorithm. So basically putting up the idea that liking a video, commenting on a video, sharing the video, doing the notification bell, things like that helps the channels, because it does, because ultimately if those things happen on a video, then it gets spread about a little bit more and it might appear on people's recommendations, and that's just the way the algorithm works. And it's a nice thing to do for a channel, because if you do want to support the channel, that's the only way to support it really, in a big way. I mean, obviously watching it is supporting it anyway, but it's certainly a way to push it forward and do more support for the channel, because anyone that does any kind of content on YouTube will clearly be very grateful, happy, excited probably by the idea that more people are watching it and that there's some kind of audience for it, and they're doing it right, basically. If it kind of stagnates or goes, or subs go lower or anything like that, then that will affect people's output. I mean, I know from a personal point of view that as it's gone up, I've got more relaxed, and my earlier ones are much more nervous, not sure if it's working, not like always happy with what I put out, but thinking, oh, that's the best I can do at the minute. And now I'm much more relaxed with it, because I feel like there's a conversation going on. There's been enough of a response that I know who's out there. I know that there is someone out there, blah, 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 blah. So those things do help a channel, just by definition. Just by doing that, it helps the channel. But it does help the system that these channels work under. The algorithm is there to push a channel that's getting that kind of attention. So you get freak things, like one of my videos, my first time travel one, that somehow got nabbed by the algorithm, and that's got loads more views, but that's presumably because it got shared at some point by somebody that mattered or something. I don't know, there's something, it hit the algorithm in some way that meant that that's getting put on more recommendations than anything else. So that's nice. There was a time when that was, when that happened, because all of my other videos had very low numbers, I could easily thought, what's the point in me? I'm just talking to myself, it's silly, But that gave me encouragement to keep going. And likewise, there's been a few that have had some traction, not as much, but enough traction for me to think, oh, people like that one, So this is not like ego related necessarily, because this is just talking about getting to the level of, it's worth me carrying on, rather than, oh, aren't I so wonderful? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the level of, yeah, this is fine. What I'm doing is fine. So that was really good advice, I think, from Brian from Bookish. It was a really good video, as all of his videos are. And he was literally just trying to point out things that maybe people who watch BookTube, YouTube, don't think about or don't realise, and they might not know how valuable a comment can be. I mean, who was it that said it? Someone else said on a video recently that just getting a comment on a video, it doesn't matter what kind of comment, it might have been Pax, might have said, whatever comment it is, it makes a huge difference to the person providing the content on the BookTube channel anyway. So sometimes it could be a very analytical comment. I leave really massive comments sometimes if I feel like I've got something to say, and sometimes I'll just say, great video, loved it, and then maybe one point about it that shows that I'm not just writing it randomly. So whatever level of comment it is, however deep the comment is, it's a really good thing to get a comment anyway. But the way that YouTube works, the more comments you've got, the more it's going to recommend to other people, just on their system of what they automatically put on people's suggestions. So yeah, really good, useful video that he did. And I wrote as a comment, I wrote, oh, I wouldn't mind thinking about maybe doing something that's music related, because a lot of people don't necessarily realise how valuable their support is to an independent artist. So obviously, being a YouTuber, you know, either on BookTube or whatever kind of tube, gaming YouTube or film review YouTube or whatever kind of BookTube you're doing, whatever kind of YouTube you're doing, because this is all YouTube, you know, whether you're just talking about books or you're talking about other stuff, it's YouTube. So that is still a creative endeavour. It's still supporting an independent creative. So I thought it actually does have some very clear parallels with independent musicians and independent bands. And because I am in a band that is independently run, we run it ourselves, and for many years I was pretty much the one doing it all. Lately that's changed, which is awesome, and I really appreciate the rest of the band helping me out with it. But for many years I was getting all the gigs, doing all the organisation and sorting out all the merch and talking to as many people as possible to try and get them to go to the gigs and all those kind of things. All those things that you would do as an independent musician. The other members of the band are now doing a lot of that, or doing enough of that so I can really feel a difference. It's great. So I'm still, you know, at the forefront of that kind of thing, but it's so great to be, to feel like it's a bit more teamy, which is good. So if anyone in my band's watching this, I love you guys. But from an audience point of view, it's sometimes interesting some of the comments people make and some of the perspectives they got on what we do when we're running a band ourselves. And they might not realise the amount of work that gets put into a set that looks frivolous, or a gig that looks like it's not important. Or they might think, oh, I won't see them this year because I saw them last year. You know, those kind of things. You know, oh, you're my favourite band, but I haven't seen you for 5 years. You know, those kind of things. And obviously, people have very busy lives. There's loads of things they can do, and you know, I'm sure they've always got an absolutely brilliant reason to not go to a gig. But I do think part of it as well is the fact that some people think that any band that's not made it is doing it as a hobby. So that can be misleading, because some people are doing it as a hobby, and some people are trying to do it semi-professionally or trying to put as much into it so their songs get a lot of traction and get, you know, they want to be trending and all that kind of stuff, you know, and that's different from doing it as a hobby. And they will travel distances to play, and they expect to be paid, and they want to make albums, and they want to make merch and all those kind of things. That's not a hobby. Whereas there are some people who just want to go out and gig occasionally. And I think for those bands, they would be a little bit more casual about whether someone turned up or not. They go, that's cool, don't worry, come and see us whenever you want, and blah, blah, blah. But for the bands that are really trying to do something with their band and are running it themselves, it makes a huge difference. If there's people that go to their gigs all the time and see them as much as they can, those people are invaluable. Those people are absolute gods of the audience, and they are so grateful to those people, because those people are making the band do what they can do. And the point is, if you are taking it that seriously, a lot of what the band does costs money. It costs organisation, it costs time, it costs stress, it costs patience. There's so many costs in it that go beyond, yeah, I'm in a band, do it for a laugh, yeah, it's great, just occasionally go out and play with my mates. There are so many things that are added to that if you're doing it beyond a hobby. So, what could you do to support those bands that you want to support? Some of this is going to be well obvious. The first point seems really obvious, but as I've already kind of implied, some people can be quite casual about it and not realise how important their presence in a gig can be. So my first point is go to see them. So the live industry is still, well, even more so, it's not even just still, but it's more important now than ever. It's pushing the industry in a way that hasn't before. So if you go back to the old business model pre-internet of the music industry, the gigs, the tours were put on to promote the albums that had been made. So the albums would be the thing that the record companies and the artists are expecting to gain a lot of money from, and then they'd go on tour for 18 months or 2 years to push the album they just created, and they'd bung some of the songs from the new album on this tour, and they'd call it probably the name of the album. That'd be the name of the tour, and the whole point of the tour is to sell the album. Now it's changed, partly because physical media has gone a lot less popular. That's part of the reason. And part of the reason is because streaming services have meant that there's just not a lot of money in the recordings that get made. And the recordings are almost like advertising. So the recordings are putting the band out there. They're making the music illustrate what the band is, so that people go see them live, because it's the live industry that's where you generate the money. Also, obviously, the songwriting. But if there's some members of the band that aren't songwriters, then obviously they're getting money from the gigs, right? So any angle of the live industry is what's keeping the bands going and keeping them either professional and they've made it and they're still in the industry and it's making them play all the big venues, blah, 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 blah. Or it's got to be said that it's making them semi-professional. You know, supporting an indie band is usually keeping them going on a level that's not all over the TV or all over Netflix documentaries or all over the biggest venues or all over the main stages at the biggest festivals. That's not what it's all about. There are thousands and thousands of bands just in this country. They're at a level where they're getting paid regularly and it's supplementing another income, but you've never heard of them, because they have a core audience that increases gradually, but it's enough for them to say, you know, this is part of what I do, this is part of my life, and it's more than a hobby. It's not something I just jump into casually and just do for fun. This is something that I'm taking seriously, and I want it to get bigger and bigger and bigger, blah, blah, blah. So those people need people to go and see them, as well as obviously the big names that want to have this big successful career. At any level, people need people to go to see them. And just focusing on the indie bands, as in independent bands, don't want to confuse the indie genre thing, don't get me started. The going to see them live comment means whenever you can, whenever it makes sense to you to see them, but it's also in different contexts. So they may be, so my band, for example, we do a whole range of different gigs. So we do pub gigs where we're guaranteed payment from the pub, and we're expected to play for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. We'd usually play, if we can. If there's a curfew, then we might just stick to 2 hours, but we'll try and do 2.5 hours because I think that's a better gig. And the idea is that we get money from the pub because we're bringing people in. That's the idea. And I've always felt quite strongly about the fact that you can, if you get enough of a following or you appear at the same pub enough times, you can fill your sets, your 2.5 hour sets or whatever, with original songs. You don't have to do the jukebox gigs, which some people think you have to do if you're in a pub. I think you do a blend of both, and you can still sell the recordings you make and sell your own songwriting in a pub gig, and you're guaranteed a payment. There are also venue gigs that you're not always guaranteed a payment. You know, it could be you're supporting someone and you just want to get the prestige of supporting that act or meeting them, talking to them. I've supported loads of people in the past and had some fantastic conversations with them and connected to them sometimes, and that's been really valuable for the band. We've had really good people support us as well, actually, in the past, and you know that similar things happened. But those gigs sometimes are not paid gigs. Sometimes they are not paid that much, and it's not necessarily for the money in the same way, but it's for other reasons. But again, if you went to those gigs, if the venue notices that there's a whole audience for the support act, they think, oh, we can give them the support for this other act, and again, it helps the band out. I'm not suggesting you go to an expensive gig to see a band that's just started, who's just supporting, and you're not interested in the main act. But it is something worth thinking about, that if you go to see a main act you're interested in, and you get there and make it known, because you're there early enough to watch the sport, and you make it known by cheering or whatever, that the venue notices that the sport's going down well, and there's a big audience for them at the start, it does make a difference to the artist. It does make a difference to the support artist. So you might get those kind of gigs. You might get a venue gig that has got some sort of ticket split or some sort of deal that, for an indie band, if they just started, doesn't mean they get a lot of money. You might get more money from a pub gig, but it's a way of having a venue gig. Venue gigs are very different from pub gigs, because usually the PA is brilliant. The professional people you work with in the venue just gives it a different sound, and you've got not a lot of, I'd say most pub gigs I've seen, the drums aren't mic'd up. So in a venue, the whole sound is bigger because everything's mic'd up. So it's a different experience for the band and for the audience, and usually it's more in your face, and most bands would rather you saw them in a venue than a pub. But usually there's a ticket price. And I've had people come up to me before and said, oh, well, because you play pub gigs and you play venue gigs, why would we pay for a ticket when we can see you free? And again, that comes back to my idea of think about supporting the band. And, I always say when I advertise the big gigs, because we run our own venue gigs, we've got a fantastic local venue that's a great venue to work with, and we've got a good relationship with them. And in the past, we've had some fantastic numbers in the venue as well. It's a 400 cap venue, and we've done really well in the past. COVID's kind of affected it a bit, but again, that's affected every gig anyway. But anyway, those gigs, I always say in the advertising of those gigs, I always say this is the best way to see us. Please come and see us whenever you can, and in the pub gigs. But if you see us at this venue gig, we are going to sound the best we've ever sounded. And we'll, and what I try and do is we have conversations in the band about doing something special in these venue gigs. So we might have a one-off performance of one of the songs, turn something into an a cappella thing, or have loads of guests in it, or, those kind of things. And also, because of the nature of my band, we have ex-members that have left the band come and join us and stuff like that. So we make it a bit of a show. And, it's really nice that when we've got a longer set like that in a venue gig, and we've got quite a lot of songwriters in the band, and we've got lots of lead singers in the band, and we can spread out and enjoy each other's creativity in the band, rather than just focus on the well-known songs that you might do if you've just got a half an hour support slot. So what I'm saying is, it's not really supporting the band to say, I'll come and see you when it's free, but I'm not going to pay to see you. All right. Because obviously any band would appreciate you going to a free gig anyway, because you're just going to see them, and that's great. But if you can afford to go and see them at a venue, then it's a big thing, and it really does make a big difference. Same with going to a festival. So a part of the reason why I'm doing it tonight, I've just come back from a festival, and it was a really good festival for us. We had a great spot on a great stage, we had a great audience, and we had a great time. And it was really good for us. So if anyone from Victorious is watching, thank you so much for the slot we were given this year. It's a great gig. But I know that some people have boycotted the festival because it had these big names in it, and they thought it was all about money and all about supporting the big names, and seemed to ignore the fact that there was probably more than 100 local artists playing, or not necessarily a local, but people that were just starting or hadn't got to that kind of fame yet. And it seems strange to ignore that, because obviously if you do buy a ticket and you don't actually worry too much about the big names, and you're going around supporting those acts that need that support, then that is exactly what you're doing. You're supporting independent artists by being in front of them, cheering them. That band walks away going, oh, we're getting somewhere. That was a really good gig. They liked us. They liked that song, whatever song it is, and blah, blah, blah. And it is a bit short-sighted to assume that bands just do these festivals, don't really care who's in front of them, and might want to do a festival to get a free ticket to see Sugar Babes or something. That's not why independent artists that are taking their music seriously and want the music to travel are doing those festivals. They're doing them because festivals are really good for independent artists. Festivals give you a completely new audience. They can be great sources for increasing the status of a band. And they are also great ways for a band to develop on stage, develop relationships with other bands, which can be really useful, and to develop a different kind of relationship with an audience. So the one thing I love about being in a band, the one thing I love about being at the front, singing at the front, and having a lot of responsibility for the tone of the gig, is reading a room. If it's an indoor gig, I love reading the room. I love changing the set if it works and if I need to do it. And we've got a huge repertoire that we can do that, and I do enjoy that. And if at the end of the gig we've got a huge crowd that haven't left and they're really enjoying themselves, I love the feeling that we won them over and we did well reading the room. The same thing applies to festivals. So with a festival, your audience is completely new. There's a whole load of people that are new to you, especially if you do a festival that's miles and miles and miles away. And if any bands watching this that thinks, God, that sounds a lot of hassle, if you really are serious about the music, it is definitely worth doing that, because it can make a huge difference if you travel a long way to play a festival. It's never a waste of time. Which brings me on to merchandise. So, there was one other point I was going to make about the go and see them live thing. Invite your friends. If you love a band, tell your mates, these guys are really good. You know, obviously if there's someone that has the same taste as you, but if you know that someone will like a particular band, tell them, come and see blah 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 with me. And if they love them as well, then it could be that you might not even be able to make one gig, and that other person can, who you introduce them to, and then they go, to see them. That's just a given, isn't it? If you take someone with you, then that will increase that band's visibility. So, could be an obvious thing. Merchandise, though. A lot of independent bands make their own merchandise now. It's not something that used to be done when I was a kid, because it was just too expensive for anyone to do independently, I think. I think that's why it wasn't done. But now you can do it, and it's something that you can get a lot out of as far as increasing your visibility around. If someone's wearing a T-shirt, then that genuinely has an effect on other people seeing those T-shirts around. And obviously it generates money for the band as well. And that money can make a big difference to what they can do as far as buying their own PA, increasing their equipment, buying studio time, rehearsal time, travelling to different gigs. We have a kitty in our band, and that kitty pays for so many different things. So if a band has a kitty, then merch can put a lot of money into that kitty. So it is worth, just from the point of view of generating money, to doing it. But it also helps the visibility of the band if you've bought T-shirts and stuff like that. Any kind of merch that is a public thing, like a T-shirt or a cap or a badge. Americans say buttons. That can help a band as well, loads. So all of those things are so important to independent artists. If you bought a Jim Morrison T-shirt, Jim Morrison doesn't care, and there's probably that's an old cliche, in it. There's a lot of people that buy those T-shirts, like Ramones and, for some reason, Che Guevara and Jim Morrison. Those are three kind of classic examples of people who buy those T-shirts and don't know who they are. And if you buy a band T-shirt from an independent artist, then that is gold for those artists. They are so appreciative, because it makes a huge difference. It really makes a huge difference. If they're the kind of band that play at festivals like we are, and that festival site the following year has got a dozen people walking around that site with those t-shirts on, there's a lot of subliminal advertising there. It makes a huge difference. So some of that's obvious, but those merch can be a really big, important thing to help and support artists. Liking them on social media. So this links into what Brian was saying about booktubers, that doing the general stuff on the social media sites, liking, commenting, sharing, all those kind of things is absolutely true for independent artists. But also, in the same way as you can subscribe to a YouTube channel, subscribing to a newsletter on their website is really, really important as well, because again, it's a direct bit of communication between the band and the audience, and ultimately we've seen social media sites come and go. Facebook's been around for quite a while. It's adapted itself quite often to make sure it doesn't go away, because it nicked a lot of things from MySpace, but it's not going to last forever. And when it does go, if a member of the audience has got a direct link via their email to getting some news from the band, that's fantastic. So anything like that is really supporting the band. And talking about them on forums, the internet is a great source for discussion. And if a band is discussed on a forum, that's fantastic for the band. The first 3-day festival that my band got, and just to clarify, when I say my band, the band I'm in, I don't own the band. I would expect any member of the band to say my band. I hope that makes sense, because it makes sense to me. But the first 3-day festival we got was because somebody was discussing us on a Levelers forum, and that kind of gained some traction, and then people going, oh yeah, I've seen them, and blah, blah, yeah, we should go and book them for this festival. And I was told about it, so I phoned the organisers, and they genuinely said, oh, I was going to phone you this week, so it's great that you've got to me first. And that was because we were being discussed on a forum. So, talking about a band might sound like, well, I'm sure it's not that important, who cares? But it can make a huge difference. So that's another thing that could help. 2 things to finish with, because this is a very long video. Spotify. Spotify is the new... it's the big king of streaming services. It's the new way to rank and judge the status of a band. Doesn't look like it's going away yet. I think it will eventually, but it's not going to go away yet. And it's very, very important. And I don't actually use Spotify much. I use it now and again, literally very rarely, but now and again. So I'm not helping a lot of the bands that I love by listening to Spotify a lot. But if you do listen to Spotify a lot, then keep that in mind when you think you'd like to support a particular band, and listen to those guys on Spotify. Because again, like we've been talking about algorithms, the more they get the more listens they get, and the more different people that listen to them, the more those bands get recommended to other people on Spotify. That's the way it works. So these automatic generated things like YouTube and Spotify, it's all worked out because they guess that something's popular because something's been done frequently. Either they've commented frequently, or they've shared it frequently, or they've listened frequently, or they've put it on a playlist frequently. Those kind of things, and making playlists with those artists on is a good shout as well on Spotify. I'm sure there's loads of other videos around on YouTube that tell you about how to get the most out of Spotify, but you can't ignore that. It's a huge player in the music industry now, and it's really, really important. So if you do use Spotify, then you could use that to help the independent artists as well. And then one last thing, tell them you love them. I'm sure any band member of any band would not be averse to getting frequently told that someone loves their music. So, whenever they post something, put a comment. Whenever they put some sort of bit of news out, say something, and just give them that encouragement. So it sounds a bit basic, sounds a bit obvious, but I think it's a good way to finish, because even sometimes the obvious gets ignored or gets you know, doesn't get done that frequently. So, you know, whenever you get the urge, tell them. I hope that was interesting. I mean, it depends how many people watch this that listen to music a lot or want to support independent musicians. It's more frequent now. There's more people around that are running their own band now, and the DIY ethic has become pretty mainstream, whereas obviously if you go back to the 70s and 80s, it was a new thing in Britain anyway, and now it's, you know, it's almost expected for people just starting. But if all these things happen and the music's great and the band are really committed and really push themselves, who knows where it'll take them. You can have some amazing adventures in a band. I've kept my wristband, by the way, for tomorrow, because I do want to see Sam Fender. We'll see what happens. But we had a great gig today. Anyway, thanks for watching. This is longer than half an hour, which is not what I planned, so apologies if it was too long. But please leave some comments about what you think about supporting independent musicians. And thanks again to Brian for encouraging me to do this, because his videos are great. If you want to watch Brian from Bookish talk about this kind of thing, he does lots of discussive videos, which is really cool. Then check them out. Thanks a lot. Bye.